BingX, a trusted global crypto exchange. Trade spot, futures, or copy top traders easily. Sign up via the link or referral code to get 30 USDT instantly, plus up to 1,500 USDT in bonuses for verification, deposit, and trading.
Trump sanctions have swift impact. But will the world stop buying Russian oil and gas? Donald Trump's stated mission to broker peace in Ukraine hinges on a critical question. Can the US president persuade the global community to cease purchasing Russia's fossil fuels? In a decisive move last week, Trump levied sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, Russia's two largest oil companies, aiming to cripple Moscow's capacity to finance its war efforts. Tom Keating, founding director of the Center for Finance and Security at the defense think tank RUSI, remarked, "The US has been more effective in 24 hours than the EU has been in the last 6 months." Trump is willing to say what many others are too timid or too diplomatic to say out loud. For the longest time, people have been calling for Trump to pull out the sanctions hammer. It could be very significant. These sanctions carry immense weight, as companies engaging with Russian oil now risk expulsion from the dollar-based financial system. This poses a particularly significant challenge for India and China, nations that have ascended to become the primary importers of Russian oil and gas following the Kremlin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine over 3.5 years ago. The impact has been immediate and substantial. Within hours of the sanctions being imposed, global oil prices surged by 6%. Reports soon emerged of an abrupt halt in Russian oil deliveries to India's largest refineries, Moscow's biggest crude customer, and to China's leading state-owned oil companies. Luke Wickenden, an analyst at the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, highlighted the potentially devastating consequences for the Kremlin's revenue streams if Asia significantly reduces its fossil fuel imports. Between January and September this year, 86% of Russia's crude oil exports, including pipeline deliveries, went to China and India. If Moscow lost access to these markets, it could forfeit approximately $7.4 billion in monthly revenue, translating to roughly $3.6 billion in tax receipts per month flowing directly into the Kremlin's war chest, Wickenden stated. He added a glimmer of hope, noting, "In September, Russian crude imports by India's state-owned refineries dropped to their lowest levels since May 2022, falling by 38% month-on-month. If India alone were to cut its imports of Russian crude, the Kremlin could lose roughly $1.6 billion in monthly tax revenues." Russia's monthly fossil fuel export revenues experienced a 4% decline last month, reaching their lowest point since the full-scale invasion and now standing at half of their September 2022 levels. While Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared he will never bow to US pressure, he has conceded that sanctions may result in some losses. Despite significantly reduced revenues, Moscow's fossil fuel income is being propped up by purchases from buyers in Asia and Eastern Europe, as well as shipments of seaborne liquefied natural gas to the EU. Russia is also believed to be circumventing Western sanctions through the use of shadow tankers, a fleet of aging vessels for crude oil exports. Trump's latest initiative to starve the Kremlin's war machine of fossil fuel revenues followed a muted reception to his demands that India and China curtail their Russian energy imports or face harsher trade penalties. Beijing vehemently denounced the Trump administration's actions as unilateral bullying and economic coercion, asserting its legitimate oil purchases from Russia and vowing firm countermeasures if its national interests were threatened. Trump, however, claimed that during a recent phone call, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi assured him that Delhi would not be buying much oil from Russia, as he too wants to see the war end with Russia-Ukraine. While Modi has acknowledged the call, during which Trump extended Diwali greetings, he has not publicly confirmed any plans to limit India's crude imports from Russia. Keating views Trump's endeavor to dismantle Russia's energy dominance as having a dual benefit. There is an opportunity here to bring peace to Ukraine and profit to the US. The United States has emerged as Europe's preeminent supplier of LNG, a role solidified since the war in Ukraine disrupted pipeline imports of Russian gas and slowed seaborne shipments. Last year, US LNG accounted for over 55% of the EU's total LNG imports, a dramatic increase from negligible volumes in 2019. Trump can anticipate further growth in US gas exports to Europe. especially following the EU's agreement last week to phase out all Russian gas imports, including LNG, by early 2027. Despite a significant reduction in Europe's dependence on Russian energy, the continent continues to fund the Kremlin through its purchases of Russian oil and gas. A situation Keating described as a disgraceful stain on the EU. According to data from CRE, the EU remains the largest buyer of Russian LNG, securing half of Russia's total LNG exports, followed by China, 22%, and Japan, 18%. The bloc also leads in pipeline gas imports, accounting for 35% of Russia's pipeline gas, with China, 30%, and Turkey, 29%, as the next largest buyers. Hungary and Slovakia were the EU's most significant importers of Russian gas last month, with expenditures of €393 million and €207 million respectively on Russian fossil fuels. France, Belgium, and the Netherlands have also continued to import Russian gas. France was the EU's third largest buyer of Russian gas last year, importing €153 million worth of Russian fossil fuels, primarily in the form of LNG, some of which was subsequently delivered to Germany. Belgium ranked fourth, importing €92 million of Russian LNG, while the Netherlands purchased €62 million of LNG. Keating questioned the timeline for the EU's energy transition, stating, "The EU has been quick to say they're bringing forward the day they stop to January 2027. But how many Ukrainians will die before then? Some European countries were able to find a way to go without Russian imports almost immediately. This should have come 3 years ago. We should hold India and China to account, of course, but we should look at our own, too." The long-term repercussions of Trump's campaign against Russia's fossil fuel revenues and its potential to usher in peace for Ukraine and prosperity for the U.S. remain subjects of speculation. Industry observers caution that the effectiveness of these sanctions will hinge on their strict enforcement and the responses of nations still reliant on Russia's fossil fuel supplies. Nevertheless, Keating expresses optimism, concluding, "Never bet against Trump.